right, folks, we're back. Coachful Coaching Podcast number 002. And today we're talking to Abbas Rangwala. Abbas, nice to see you, my friend.
How are you doing, Dave?
I'm good, sir. How you doing?
I'm great. It's a beautiful Sunday morning. I'm excited. It's great.
Okay. Well, hey, why don't we just start off and introduce yourself to the team here that's on this phone, video, mobile, whatever they're on, right? Watching this podcast.
Awesome. So good morning, good afternoon, good day, everyone. My name, as Dave mentioned, is Abbas Rangwala. I've been working as a SC leader for the past 7 years now. Spent my life in customer service. I've been an agent on the phone. I've been a team lead in a contact center. I've built contact centers. I've managed contact centers. In a past life, I used to work at Bell, which is one of the largest telcos in Canada, where I would make business decisions. So I would be the one who's buying software. And then some friends convinced me to go to Salesforce, which was a fun time. And I started selling to contact centers over there. And then from Salesforce, I moved to ServiceNow. So being in the industry for a little bit over 21 years, live in Toronto, Ontario, father of two awesome boys, spouse, son, wear multiple hats, lost my hair trying to do stuff that we'll talk about a little bit later on in the podcast. But essentially that's me, Dave.
Okay, we definitely need to talk about how you lost your hair. I wasn't going to mention it, but since you brought it up, well, Abbas,
it's not yours. So I always say I lost it after I got married, so I blame her.
Oh. All right, that possibly needs editing out. But if you disappear for any reason after this podcast, we know why. All right. Well, thanks, Abbas, for that introduction. And, folks, Abbas and I, we've worked together for a number of years, but, even after he moved on to another organization, we've stayed in contact. He's someone I really respect, a leader I really respect, and more so his values and his philosophies around leadership. And we want to share a little bit about you today, Abbas. So let's get started. And I want to talk a little bit about you and let folks know who Abbas Rangwala is to get started. And, I sent you some questions before we hopped on here to have folks understand a little bit more about you. So I'm just going to choose one out of the hat. And the question was, do you have a crazy but true fact about yourself? And you wrote, I know hypnotism. Explain that, sir.
So I grew up in Mumbai, India. And as I was going through college, I had this blessing of being in this weird group of people who had very eclectic tastes. So one of them was really into yoga and hypnotism for whatever reason. So she was like, hey, I'm learning hypnotism. Do you want to learn hypnotism along with me? And I'm like, okay, that sounds great. So I've learned hypnotism. I'm a clinical hypnotist. I cannot hypnotize you by looking in your eyes, Dave, so you can keep looking at me. You're safe.
I'm hypnotized right now. Does that count?
But it's just been awesome. So there are a couple of myths about, I'll tell you a quick story about that. So a few years back when my kids were younger, we were sitting in a parents-teacher kind of a meeting. It was a meeting on Friday, and they asked all the parents to go around the table and talk a little bit about and say something about themselves. So we all did the sharing. It was all great. On Monday, when I go to the school and I just say good morning, whatever, to the other parents, they don't look me in the eye. They're like looking away from me. And I'm like, this seems weird. It happened with 2 or 3 parents. Till I realized that on Friday, I told them that I know hypnotism, and they literally thought I could hypnotize them by looking in their eyes. So it's a myth. You cannot hypnotize someone by looking in the eyes. I'm not a stage hypnotist, but I am a clinical hypnotist.
Okay, I do want to dive into that one, my friend. So apart from making me cluck like a chicken right now,
Uh-huh.
right, and pretend I'm in the ocean swimming, what does being a clinical hypnotist mean?
So essentially, and again, like I'm not certified or anything like that, right? So I don't want to pretend to be an expert in that. But essentially, it allows people to go into this really deep state of calmness where essentially everything sort of slows down a little bit, right? And you start listening to the signals that your body's sending, you start listening, your thoughts become a little more clear. So I'm essentially someone who facilitates. So for example, if you were coming to me, Dave, I would facilitate you getting into the state of relaxation and calmness, which could help you deal with the everyday stress of living. And we all go through different stresses at work, at home, and so on. But also, if you're trying to get clarity around a big decision, it really helps you with that. So if you're sort of struggling with a couple of things, like Sherlock Holmes, when he was struggling with a difficult case, would go and see the opera or would play the violin, something which allows the brain to do something else. And while your conscious brain is doing something else, your subconscious brain is tweaking and turning and figuring stuff out for you. So hypnotism, at least the way I sort of do it, allows you to get into the state where you allow your brain to do some of the work that it does anyways, but get more clarity to your thought process.
Okay. I think I'm having some understanding, and I might be butchering this, but one of the things that in the last few years that I've actually tried to do more of, I actually did more of is go for really long walks, especially early in the morning. And, apart from the benefits of getting sunlight and great air, is that it's amazing the problems that solutions to problems that suddenly just come to me when I'm not thinking about it, right? I'd solve 2 or 3 key problems that's been bothering me on, an hour to 2 hour walk. And I was thinking about it consciously before the walk, but during the walk, basically near the end, right? When I'm just in this flow, I solve the problem, like, and I hurry up and write it down somewhere so that I don't forget. I mean, is that sort of the thing you're talking about there?
That's totally it. Like a lot of my team, when they come to me and they're like, "Hey, I'm thinking about this," I'm like, "Okay, go take a walk or go for a shower," right? Like the shower fairy is real, because when you're sort of not. And again, our subconscious brain is so much more powerful than we give it credit for, right? So even while you're not consciously thinking about it, you're in the flow, as you said, you're walking around, you're doing whatever, you're playing music, you're listening to something, the subconscious is turning and tweaking. And the trick is for your conscious brain, when your subconscious arrives at the decision, for your conscious brain to recognize that and pick that decision up. So exactly to your point, like sometimes the ideas and the solution will come to you, but you won't even think about it, and then you'll forget it, right? So to your point where, hey, I quickly write it down, like you need to be conscious enough to sort of know this is the solution versus, hey, I got this idea, but damn, I can't remember it. It was the most brilliant idea ever, but I've forgotten it now.
Yeah. Well, we'll jump back into this one a little bit later. Hopefully we have some time. I do want to talk about that and your opinion around this. But I do, just in my years knowing you, this reminds me, like you're a very pragmatic individual, right? But at the same time, there's a spiritual side to you, right? And I recall it. Did you ever do this? You talked about being in some monastery somewhere where you didn't talk for 30 days or 30 seconds.
Yeah. So
what was that about?
It's not far from Toronto. It's near Barrie, actually. So if you go north from Toronto, maybe an hour north.
Lots of quiet people there. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's called Vipassana. And essentially, it's a 10-day silence fast. So you take a vow of silence for 10 days, and there's absolutely no communication allowed. You are in a group, but you can't even acknowledge each other. You can't nod. You can't say good morning. You cannot say anything. You cannot write anything. They take your phone away at the beginning. You cannot read anything. So essentially, you're with your thoughts. And when I first heard about it, I'd heard about it a few years back. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to last, right? Like, I love talking. Talking to people gives me energy. So I love interacting. I love communicating. I love talking to people. I'm like, 10 days of not talking is just going to be impossible. But it was relatively easy. It was easy. What was more difficult was they had a bunch of exercises around sort of, observing yourself, observing your thought process, calming your mind down. I thought those exercises were much more difficult than the actual not talking. Like, it was weird for the first day or so, but then, the human body is freaking amazing. You get used to it. And before you know it, 10 days passed. It was awesome. I'll tell you a benefit of that. So when I come back, anyways, I'm a pretty calm person, right? Like, I don't really get annoyed or angry easily. But after I came back from Vipassana, if I ever found myself getting angry, I could actually observe myself getting angry, and there was a point where I could decide, do I want to continue being angry or do I want to stop? And that was so powerful, because like, even at that time, the kids were young, right? And they would sometimes do stuff that was annoying, but I would know I'm getting angry, and I had the choice to say, hey, listen, it's not worth it. Let's not get angry on this thing because it's small or trivial. But that amount of control over the emotions was pretty awesome. Of course, I've lost it now, but I need to go back. And not
now you just get angry all the time, right?
I'm angry right now.
Well, if this is you angry, perhaps I can hypnotize you. All right. Well, thank you for sharing that. That's I remember you telling me that story, and it sounds like, though, it's with practice, and even a short amount of practice, you can almost like short circuit a lot of these pathways that are built in our mind, right? Where we don't even think about it, whether it's anger, whether it's nervousness. Like I talk a lot about this, and I plan to in this podcast, but as well with folks one-on-one, is it is short circuiting a lot of these processes that are built in. I think the New Age, they call it mindfulness, or a lot of other words for it, but it is being aware that something is happening, right? When you have this bubbling up of like energy right here, that's what you call anger, right? For some people, and it's being aware of that for you. So that's great. Carry on.
No, that sort of takes us back to, we were talking about going for a walk, or like Bill Gates, for example, he loves washing dishes, right? Like he does the dishes in his house. But it's essentially taking a pause from the day-to-day life and reflecting on, what the day was. And you'll be surprised at how many behaviors are subconscious. Like, we don't even know we are doing stuff till we sit and reflect on that. And then you go, oh my God, maybe next time I won't react this way, and be more mindful about stuff. So you're absolutely right, Dave.
Yeah. And I love that story. At the same time, I'm going to call BS. One of the richest men in the world, billionaire, he washes his own dishes. Like, it doesn't have a dishwasher, right?
Get him on your podcast next, Dave, and ask him the question.
I know. We'll invite him here next. So you talked about your time in Mumbai, right? Growing up. Talk more about that. Like, how did that growth experience growing up there, how did it shape you?
So Mumbai is a city that you either love or you hate. Like, you cannot really be in between, especially if you're not a local, if you're not a native of Mumbai and you're visiting. You would either just fall in love with that city because of the sounds and the smells and the sights. It's just incredible. Or you would sort of say, hey, this is too chaotic for me. I can't really be there. Growing up there, it was one of the best cities to grow up in, Dave. It's so multicultural. I know 6 languages because I grew up in Mumbai. Because, my neighbors and the people across the street and people in my school would be from different backgrounds. And one of the beauties of India is you go for a few kilometers and everything changes. The cuisine is different. The colors are different. The language, the dialects are different. So growing up, it was extremely exciting to be in Mumbai. It was just before it was when the internet was starting that I was in college. So it was a really exciting time, technologically as well. But it really made me the person I am today, right? And it gave me access to a lot of people, a lot of resources. and a lot of lessons, to be honest with you, which live to me to this day.
So you know 6 languages,
Yeah.
right? And you've multicultural. You drive a few kilometers or a few miles out, and you're in a different cultural center, basically.
Yeah.
It sounds like the story of like I've known folks growing up in Europe, like Switzerland and such, and they talk about the same thing, and a lot of them are multilingual as well. And I think it's one of the things actually we don't have here in North America, because we're so spread out, and it's not the same. Let's put it that way, right? So I guess like just living in that environment, how's it translated to some of the ways you think today? Like how you approach things, how you look at the world?
It's always about the community first. Like growing up in India, I feel over here, when you think about yourself and your community, certain places and certain times, and rightly so, the focus should be on you, right? Like what are my needs? What do I need? In certain contexts, in certain places, the focus should be on, even if I have to make a sacrifice, it's okay because I'm doing it for the greater good of the community, for the greater group, the greater good of the group. Growing up in Mumbai, it's always about the group, and which is a great thing, but it can also stifle yourself, right? Like it could stifle your growth as a person, because you're constantly being taught to make sacrifices for the greater good. And there's a cultural reason and a cultural context behind that. When I came over here to North America, I've been here for 22 years, but it was empowering to see that it's okay to say no to certain things because they get in the way of my personal beliefs or my personal growth. And I am important as a person as well. So I think having grown up in sort of both scenarios, making a blend of the two and a balance between the two has been incredible. So there are times when it's okay for me to say no. And I don't know if it's similar, and I'm sure it's similar in many other cultures as well. But for example, as a son, and if your parent says something, you just do it, right? Even if you don't want to do it.
Yep.
Versus over here, I can sort of say, hey, and I can hopefully, I'm teaching my kids as well to, they need to think about what's important for them as well, and then help have a dialogue, right? Like it's not, hey, you're just doing something because I'm saying that. But it's the balance. You cannot go on, you cannot swing the pendulum towards one end too hard, because then you lose everything else. So you need to find the right balance between individualism and doing stuff for the community.
Yeah. Yeah. And you say a lot of cultures, it is very different. Like I'm a child of immigrants as well, right? Coming from the Chinese culture it is very much about, the good things is respect your elders. That's something that should always be there, respecting other people, respecting the community, helping others, right? Family first, right? You help your family, and always first, right? But you're right. To what point? To it should not be at the sacrifice of your personal ambitions, right? Your personal growth, right? And I think that's the balance that a lot of us have to draw in lives, right? And then there's the other extreme, right, Abbas, where some folks grow up in environments, not even cultures, it's environments where it's all about yourself.
Right.
Right. I've had friends growing up. The most shocking thing to me, actually, when I was a kid, I remember saying, "Oh, I go to school." I tell my friend, like, "Oh, I'm so tired after this holiday," and she was like, "Why?" I go, "Well, one of my family members was in the hospital, and so I had to be there with them." Yeah. And their response was, "Why don't you just get someone else to do it?" And I nearly knocked them over the head, right? Like, wow, that's your values, right? So values is it changes along the way, right? But hopefully that person changed as well. But it's one of the things that has stuck with me as well, and it seems like it sticks with you, right? I am interested. What are your values?
So values, as you mentioned, change over time, and values also change depending on the context. So if you ask me what are my values as a leader, for example, they may be a little bit different than what are my values as a parent or what are my values as a friend. There are some which are constant no matter what you are, because that's who you are as a person. But then you put focus on certain values based on the context it's in. So if you ask me, hey, as a leader, Abbas, what are some of the values? I would say three really important values that I think all leaders should have. One is transparency. I think people trust leaders who are transparent. People trust leaders who they feel they can trust. And transparency, and maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that, is a really important aspect in there. People should feel as a leader, you're talking about the same thing when they are in the room as when they're not in the room, right? So if you're one of those leaders which will, give you great feedback on your face, but as soon as that person leaves and you're doing their performance appraisal with someone else, you're giving them something else, you've sort of lost trust as a leader. The second value is empathy. So as a leader, unless you can empathize with what your team is going through, unless you're empathetic about the team, again, you're not really going to be very successful, in my opinion, as a leader. And the third one is, and we spoke a little bit about this early on, is a Japanese word called Ikigai. So Ikigai is a state of being where what you do, what you're good at, what you can use to make money, and what the world needs. So if you think about four big buckets, what am I good at? What the world needs? What can I make money for? And is this something I enjoy? Like when all those four buckets come together in this amazing stars have aligned form, that's a state of Ikigai. And when you are in that state of Ikigai, magic happens. So how do you sort of not just put yourself in that state, but how do you help your team get to that Ikigai? Really is one of the things I strive for as a leader.
Talk to me more about Ikigai. I've heard about that. It sounds like it's a Venn diagram, right?
Yeah. So it's as I said, it's a Japanese word, and if I can take control of the screen,
yeah, please take control.
I'll share this with you. All right. So this concept has been around for a while, and essentially, it's extremely powerful, especially when you start thinking in terms of these four big buckets. So the first one is what do you love, right? Like if you're doing, if you're doing what you love, you're not working a single day in your life because you're doing what you love. So what is it that you love? Pair that with what the world needs. So for example, I may love watching TV, which is great, but is that really what the world needs? Maybe not so much. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But what you love, what the world needs, what you can be paid for. So again, maybe I love sitting at my desk and watching sunsets, but maybe I'm not getting paid for that. And then the last one is what you're good at. So when these four buckets sort of intersect, what you love, what the world needs, what you can be paid for, and what you're good at, the intersection of all these buckets is what's Ikigai. And many a times there won't be a perfect marriage of all four. Like you may, for example, what you're good at and what you love, that's your passion, right? You're good at it, you love it, that's your passion. So there's passion, there's mission, there's what's your vocation, what's your profession. But if you're lucky enough to be in this place where everything comes together and the universe has sort of, sung this symphony for you, that's the state of being in Ikigai.
So what's your Ikigai?
I'm so blessed, Dave, doing exactly what I do. So working with a team of really talented individuals, helping customers find value in the software we bring them, being paid for it, and hopefully I'm good at it. So I am in the state of Ikigai right now. I am doing what I really love. I am doing what I think it's more than just me. It's something that I'm bringing value to the world, and I'm getting paid for it, and I'm good at it. So what I'm doing right now, I feel I'm very, very close to being in Ikigai.
Okay. Well, we'll jump into that in a few minutes. I am curious though. When you look at Ikigai, it sounds like it's also about finding purpose, right? And this is one of the themes, even from my last podcast, was purpose while you're working, purpose while you're at home, purpose while you're in retirement. It's one of the key factors that determines your longevity and your health, and your vitality as an individual. So how do you continue finding purpose in what you do and how you do?
It's easy when you start thinking about it in terms of more than just yourself. So for example, my purpose is in the success of my team, right? And my purpose is in the growth that the people around me are sort of having, and the part I play in that growth. So for every person, purpose will be different, and everyone needs to sort of figure out what is it that moves them, what it is that's their purpose. For me, success of the people around me is my success. So it's kind of easy because now, even though my name is not in lights, even though my name's not on stage, if my team's name is on stage, I'm the happiest cheerleader. I'm the one who's smiling year to year because I feel like my purpose has been fulfilled because I've played a small part in helping them get to where they are. So as a leader, again, like I think when you think about, one of the qualities of leadership and even one of the cardinal rules of hiring, you hire people who are better than you. You hire people who are smarter than you, right? You surround yourself with people who are better than you in as many ways as possible. So if your purpose is, hey, I'm going to hire this really solid group of people and I'm going to help them live their best lives possible, it becomes easy because you see your happiness reflected in their smiles and you see your happiness reflected in the accolades that they get, right?
Well, it sounds like it's a group of very lucky individuals on your team.
I don't know, man. I'm lucky to have them.
Yeah, yeah, and truth be told, like you really feel that their success is your success, right? And that's ultimately, and I brought this up in the last podcast too. It's when you leave, you're not going to be doing this forever. When you leave this rat race, no one's really going to care what your role was, what your title was, how much money you made, but people will remember what you did for them and how you made them feel along the way. And I reflect on myself too. Today, I still just remember the people who, along in my journey, helped me be successful. And I mean, that's why we're talking, right? You made a mark in my journey as well, big or small, it doesn't matter. You made a mark. And so these are the people we remember. So I do want to transition a little bit to your family. So you talk about Ikigai and purpose from the point of view of your work. But what about your family, your kids? How do you apply Ikigai, purpose, right, to your family life?
Dave, if you think work is hard, and you know this, you're a parent as well, bringing up kids is 10 times as harder, right? Like there's so much more responsibility on your shoulder as a parent, and
we should get paid for that.
I know. Like I'm like, who? and there's this constant struggle between how tightly you want to hug them and how much you want them to sort of push them out of the nest so that they can fly on their own wings, right? So there's a part of you which is like, hey, I want to protect you from all the ills of the world. And then there's this other part of you which says, hey, I want you to live that as well, because that's going to be your lived experience. That's going to make you stronger. And there's this constant struggle between what's the right balance between being here when they need to and, overdoing it. So the Ikigai as a parent for me is is exactly that balance, right? It's that balance when they realize that they have the freedom to do what they want, as long as hopefully they are being responsible about it. But at any point in time, no matter how old they are, like my elder one just started university, so he's now, he's living by himself in residence. But at any point they need, we're here to help them, right? That we are here, and hopefully the values that we have as a family live on in them, even when they're not with us, right? Like they're not doing it just because they're with us. That's the value that they've been passed on. So one of the things, for example, just to take a very tactical example, is traveling. Like I'm a big believer that when you travel, you learn a lot more in a week of travel than you would learn probably, in a week at school, right? And of course, schooling is very important, and I'm not dissing it in any way, but I think there is, like when you travel, there is a lot of learning to be got in that as well. So maybe around 10 years back, my wife and I sort of sat down and decided that we'll travel to one country for every year of our lives. So every year we live, we'll sort of, see a new country. So we are at around 40 countries now. But I was, we were having this random conversation with my son, and he was like, that's such a great goal you had. I want to do something similar as well. And I'm like, great. I think I succeeded as a parent because I passed on some of the things that I think are important to me that he individually decided were important to him as well. So really, Ikigai is that balance. Dave, balance is everything. Like if you go to the extreme on anything at all, right? Like that's where trouble starts. There was this guru in Mumbai who I used to sort of listen to sometimes, and he said excess of anything is poison. When you have excess of anything, it becomes poisonous. So it's finding that moderation, it's finding that balance, which is really, really important.
So balance. How do you let's start flowing into some of your professional life then. How do you balance, the demands of home with the demands of leadership?
It's a team effort, Dave. Like I'm blessed to have a really awesome spouse. Hopefully she listens to this because she should, and she's been awesome. And I wouldn't be able to do the things I do without her taking on some of the responsibilities that she has taken on. So it's my spouse, it's my kids, it's the family, it's everyone around. So every time you see, and I think you mentioned this at the beginning, you see someone who's successful, there's this entire team of people. Like we talk about Steve Jobs many a times, right? And we are like, Steve's this awesome visionary. But you read some of the accounts and you'll realize there were so many talented people who were sort of feeding him a lot of things, right? And his genius was sort of recognizing the right things and then putting all his weight behind them. But there was this team, right? Like you can never be successful. You can never, well, unless, I don't know, you win the lottery or something, but that's another argument. But it's the team, Dave. And it's finding that support structure, finding the right mentors, finding people who we can learn from, and then leaning on them. Like there's no shame in leaning on people. There's no shame saying that, hey, I need help. Like many times people feel that if I put up my hand and I say, I need help, I'll be thought of as weak. Putting your hand up and asking for help is not a sign of weakness. It's actually a sign of strength, because you're recognizing that you need something which you don't have, and you have the confidence to ask for help. And more people should ask for help when they need it. So I know I touched upon a bunch of threads over there, but hopefully that sort of answered your question.
No, that is very important, and you got me thinking about myself too. Like one of my values is it is family, right? I grew up with four other siblings, relatively bigger family, and one thing you did for each other was just help each other, right? And that translates to leadership as well. And I understand that constant struggle or balance you're trying to make as a leader. Like how much do you and with your kids, but like how much do you let them go, right, and do their thing, and how much do you help them? And it needs to be both, right? You just got to make sure that if you let them go out to do something, whether it's your kids or your team, that they're not going to hurt themselves,
Yeah.
Proverbially or literally, right? It's enough that if they do make a mistake, it's not going to hurt them in a bad way. But it's going to be a lesson well learned, right? And some folks, you got to let them trip over it, right?
Yeah.
Whatever it might be. But the teamwork part, I couldn't do any of this stuff. I wouldn't be here if without my spouse, without my wife, without my family, my parents, right? It's tough, right? Like I talk a lot about it with friends. When my son was born, we did a lot of this. My wife and I, we didn't have much help at the time because we were out in a different part of the city, away from family, and it was a paper, rock, scissors a lot of mornings when my son was sick, because he was sick getting daycare germs. We got sick because of that. Mm-hmm. And it was paper, rock, scissors. Who's less sick, right? Who needs to stay home today? Who needs to go in today? And very fortunate, I had a understanding bosses in my time, mm-hmm. but I tell you, it was rough. It was absolutely rough. So teamwork. Let's talk about your leadership path. Like what got you into leadership, Abbas?
I fell into it, to be honest with you. You
fell into it. What's that mean?
It was at Bell. For those who don't know Bell, Bell's one of the largest telcos in Canada. And I was a product manager for them. And my manager at that time wanted to try something else. And they said, hey, you can really try something else till you have a replacement for yourself. And he turned around and said, hey, Abbas, do you want to do what I'm doing? And I'm like, sure. And that's how I started being a manager. Like this was maybe 15, 16 years ago. And at that point, I thought I would be on a path to be like, a sort of distinguished engineer or something like that, like as an IC. But I fell into management because he wanted to do something else. And I discovered I loved it. It was my Ikigai. It was something that, married my love for coaching, my love for seeing other people succeed, my love for hiring to bring in the best talent you can into the organization. And I've not looked back since then.
So, when it came to like this boss of yours who saw something in you, they saw something in you, obviously. What do you think they saw in you at the time that made them say, hey, you want to do this job?
I don't really know, Dave, because it was not something I was consciously sort of exhibiting. But I've always been someone who people will go to and sort of brainstorm with, for example. Mm-hmm. And I think being a leader is so much about being someone who people can trust. Like in my mind, I've seen different styles of leadership, right? Like there's this one sort of stern style of leadership where, I'm the captain of this, I'm the master of this domain, and my word is the word. I don't really care about what the minions say. And that's a type of leader. And, in certain places, maybe that works. But the kind of leader that I aspire to is someone who's people can just come to me. Like just day before yesterday, I was on a call, and we have some an early in career team, so people who are just out of college. We sort of went through maybe 15 minutes of chatting, and then she sort of raised her hand and she said, yeah, I think we are thinking about this completely incorrectly. And I admire her because it takes a lot of courage, but I also admire the leadership. She had like 3 levels of leadership in that room, and I admire all that 3 levels of leadership because she wasn't afraid of voicing her, and so openly, her feedback without worrying about, hierarchy or, what's the chain of communication. So being someone who people can go to, being someone who people can trust, like, I think that's what he saw in me. And he was like, hey, this sort of sounds like a leader. It looks like a leader. So maybe he should be a leader.
Sounds like a duck. Quacks like a duck.
Yeah. So that's how it happened. I honestly, when I was growing up, I wanted to be a professor. So my mom's a professor, my dad's a professor. And that's what I wanted to do. When I was in India, I used to actually teach at the University of Mumbai as well. I didn't even know what solution consulting was till I became a solution consultant. So again, the reason I sort of share that is, especially for people who are early in career, like don't get too obsessed with, hey, this is my path for the next 20 years. That path is going to be the battle is not the plan, right? You could have the best plans and then the battle happens and things change. So I grew up trained as a mathematician. Like when I did my bachelor's, I did my bachelor's in maths because I wanted to be a professor of maths. And I haven't seen a Fourier series in 25 years now. So the way life sort of takes you, the universe has a better plan for you than you have for yourself. The universe had a plan for me, Dave, to become a leader, and here I am.
Wow. Yeah, I love what you said there about you got a plan, but don't be so tied to it. It reminds me of like I don't know if you actually said this, but Mike Tyson saying, yeah, everyone has a game plan until they get hit.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's one. Isn't that one of your philosophies in life too? Something about planning. You need to plan, but plans don't always work out. I remember you saying something like that before.
I'm a big believer in setting goals because I think. So I read this stat somewhere, and like all stats, probably this one's wrong as well. But it was like 90% of people don't have a goal. 10% have a goal. Of the 10% who have a goal, 1% actually write down their goals. And 90% of success comes to that 1% who write down their goals. So writing down your goals is, and sometimes people confuse a goal with a plan. A goal is an outcome, right? Like this is what I want to do. A plan is the map to get to that to get to that destination. So I'm a big believer in sort of setting goals. And again, to your point, goals can change. It's okay if you had a goal last year and that's no longer your goal this year. That's completely okay. But have a goal. Have a short-term goal. What do I want to achieve? In this quarter. What do I want to achieve this year? What do I want to achieve in the next 5 years? And write that down. And keep that diary, like keep that journal ongoing, and that way you can reflect on yourself as in your own personal journey as well. And also, we talk about kids. There are two ways to bring up kids, Dave. There's one which is you prepare the path for the child, right? So you have your child and you're preparing the path for them. The second way is prepare the child for the path. Right? And as parents, a lot of time we try to prepare the path for the kids, but really we should be preparing our kid for the path. And as we look at, like even technology, like all the changes which AI is going to bring in our society over the next few years, a bunch of professions that we know of now will no longer exist. A bunch of professions that we don't even know of now are going to come. So when you're preparing, whether it's your child, whether it's your team member, whether it's yourself, you need to be preparing yourself on how to think, how to learn, how to evolve, how to change, how to adapt. Versus, hey, I'm sort of laying down this really well guided path for you, and that's the path I'm going to be following.
Yeah. I love that because I was just talking to my son recently. He's entering high school at the end of this year, and I think one of the things he'll notice, and I actually drew his attention to it. I go, hey, son, have you noticed that I haven't said you should take this course, that course, do this, do that, right? Like other folks say, oh, do AP, do IB, and all these other acronyms. I don't know what they are. And he goes, no. I go, what does Daddy focus on? He's like, attitude, right? And he's realizing that ever since he was young, it's more about your attitude and your discipline, right? Like he's a Taekwondo black belt now, and he realized that when he got his black belt, how hard he had to work. And then we reflected on, I go, son, you remember how many times you wanted to quit in the last, X years? He goes, yeah. I go, aren't you glad I didn't let you quit? And he's like, yeah. I go, what'd you learn? He goes, sometimes you just have to do it. You could be tired, you could be whatever, you just have to do it. I go, yeah. And it wasn't in any way trying to harm you. It was trying to teach you this attitude. So I don't care what you do. Well, I do, but you got to pay the bills, right? Like Ikigai, you got to be able to get paid for what you enjoy. But at the same time, it is the tactics, you got your goal, the outcomes you want, but how are you going to achieve that? And what attitude are you bringing to the table to achieve it? That is something I want to leave my kids with, right? Like, you could do what you want, but you're going to have the right attitude when you approach it, right? If you want to be a singer, go. Do you have the discipline? Right? Do you know how hard some of these artists, like, they're out there, they're great marketers. They work hard. They work so hard, right? Some of these folks, right?
There's a really famous quote from Serena Williams where someone asked her that, because she works really hard every single day. So one of the reporters asked her, like, are there not days where you don't feel like, working out, or you don't feel like going for practice? And she says, sure, there are days where I don't feel like practicing, but there's never a day where I don't feel like winning. And to win, I need to practice. And that's how, that's the motivation, right? So you're right. Like, at the end of the day, grit, like, you'll see a lot of TED Talks around grit as well. Like, I think grit is a great value. Grit is a great quality to have, because at the end of the day, you can't give up. You have to try. You have to get up. You have to make the bed, right? Like, you have to pay the bills. So there are things that you have to do, and you need to push yourself towards those.
Yeah. So I think this flows well into the next thing. Like, you talk about, like, lessons you've learned, the path that has been you've been preparing for. Now you're a leader. You're actually a second line leader right now in your current company. So congratulations to that. I am curious. Let's talk about failures. What are some memorable ones that you have that you're willing to share, and what you do about it?
Oh my God, Dave, that's just a lot. And so before I speak to failures, I'll tell you another Serena Williams story. So,
do you know her personally? Can you get her on this podcast?
But
okay, you're just quoting her and Bill Gates, right?
She's awesome. So one of the reporters asked her, this was in one of the press conferences, how do you feel when you lose? And she says, I don't lose. And the reporter says, what do you mean you don't lose? Like, there are games that you've lost. Like, it's a fact that you lose. She says, no, I don't lose. And the reporter says, like, that doesn't make sense. I know you have lost games, right? And you lost blah, blah, blah game 2 weeks back. And she smiles a little bit and she says, well, I don't lose, I learn. And it's such a great way of framing failure. Because there's one way of treating failure to say, oh my God, I fail and the world's going to end and the sky's going to fall and I'm a failure and I'm worthless. And you could sort of go down that path. But it's not about how you fall, it's about how you get up, right? It's about what are the lessons you've taken from that failure, and how do you make yourself and your surrounding a little bit better based on that lesson. So a lot of things I've done wrong, from sort of hiring people who were not right for the position they were hired for, from tactical sort of mistakes in a legal cycle. Like, I'm in a sales environment, and we need to make decisions around how do you sort of tackle some of the challenges that come up in sales. From at that point, I thought giving up my career aspiration to be a professor and doing something else. At that point, it seemed like a failure. Like, hey, I've sort of trained to be a professor my entire life. And now, because I came to Canada, it was, I was a first generation immigrant over here. I needed to do, I got a job doing something different. And at that time, it seemed like a failure. It seemed like, oh my God, I'm giving up something. But it made me who I am, and it's led to this talk between us today, right? So failure, like, every time I fail, what I do is I zoom out. I don't know if you a few years back there was this great internet clip which sort of showed a microscope focusing 10x at every level. Have you seen that clip at all? So it's
no, I haven't.
Okay, so it's this awesome clip which sort of starts with a leaf, and at one it starts zooming in 10x, and it goes to the cells and to the the subcells, and like at a really deep atomic level. And then they start zooming out, and they go to the plant, and then to the country, and to the world, and to the universe. And like it's just an awesome way to sort of, if you feel that particular episode has been a failure, zoom out a little bit and say, in the grand scheme of things, how is it really such a big deal? And that'll help you emotionally deal with it. And then rationally, what are the lessons you're going to be taking from it, and how are you going to make yourself better because of it?
So zoom out, right?
Zoom out, my friend.
Yeah. Is there, so what, and if you're willing to share anything specific, right? Is there any specific lesson that sticks out in your mind?
Yeah, like hiring, like that's because it sort of happened, a couple of years back, where I didn't spend enough time with the person I was hiring. I'll give you two examples. One is hiring someone, and then one was managing someone out. So I didn't spend enough time hiring that person. My lesson learned from that is, you could spend twice the amount of time and make sure you're getting the right hire, versus spending 10x the amount of time and then managing that person out later on because you made a bad hire. So we hired someone. We were in a hurry. We didn't really have a chance. Like some people are great in a structured sort of panel discussion or whatever, right? But unless you really know them, unless you really understand what's important to them, is there's how they define success. It's very easy. It's very easy to be fooled, is a strong word, but it's very easy to sort of just go to that panel and say, yeah, this person's the right fit for the job. So we brought this person in, not at all the right fit. And now we are stuck with, how do we manage this person out? Because if you leave the wrong person in place, it's not just bad for that person, because clearly that person was not a good fit. It's a stretch. It's a burden that you're placing on yourself as a leader. It's a burden you're placing on the team. It's a burden you're placing on the company as well. So that's one sort of recent example where, I sort of made a mistake, and, I had to sort of pay the price from it. And the lesson I learned from that is, take your time, right? Like, make sure you know the person, make sure you're identifying what's important, what their values are, before you actually decide to hire someone. It's when you look at attitude and aptitude, a lot of times our hiring process focus on aptitude, right? Like how much knowledge they have, what kind of experience they have. But you need to really pay attention to the aptitude, because attitude is a lot more important sometimes. Attitude, because attitude is a lot more important sometimes than just their knowledge or their aptitude.
Yeah. And I think that goes back to what I was saying, like teaching my kids too, like attitude, right? Having the right attitude that inherently flows into the values that individual will have. Now, it's not going to be a 1-for-1 match, right? But there's got to be, our values got to support each other, right? And, if I feel that, a certain value, empathy is important, you can't be diametrically opposite from that and think that, a crassness is important, right? And I know this is a whole subject of its own, like how some companies hire for talent, right? Is purely looking at, well, how long you been at school XYZ, and what jobs have you had, and how many certificates do you have, and you know what? It's not just the what, it's how. How did you get things done? Right? How did you support the people around you? How did you make them feel? Did they feel supported? What would they say about you? Right? How did you lift others up while you're doing it? Those are things like, for myself, that's very important, right? It's not just what you did, it's how you did it with other people and how you engage them in the process. So some good lessons there. It sounds like a common mistake that we all make as leaders is hiring the wrong person, looking at aptitude too much rather than attitude. And sounds like a lesson learned for you when you zoom out, right?
Attitude eats aptitude for breakfast. thing, right? Like if you had to choose, always choose attitude, even if that means getting someone who's maybe a little less experienced in the areas you need experience in. You can teach. You can teach technology. You can teach that. You cannot teach attitude. So
and that's something I we'll probably talk off camera about that, or after this is about that. Like, I really believe that I'd rather hire someone more hungry and willing to go the extra mile because they want to and they're passionate versus, this person's been in the industry for 25, 30 years, but there's no more fire in them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
How are you serving yourself and others in that case? Yeah. Right. You mentioned mentors in your life. Talk about, apart from Serena Williams, who you're very good friends with, apparently, talk about some of the best mentors you've had, and what did they teach you?
Pretty much everything I am because of people I've sort of learned it from. And one maybe mistake people make when they're thinking about mentors is they'll say, I have this person I really admire. I want that person to be my mentor. And that's my mentor, forever and for every single thing. And when I sort of coach people, I say, you don't need to have a one be-all, end-all mentor. You can have multiple mentors for very specific things. So, for example, when I first became a manager, I didn't really know how to hire too well. And what I mean by how to hire too well is I would have the first, like all managers, you would have a first 30, 45-minute sort of screening type interview where you would just get to know the person a little bit. And I felt I would go through that entire 30, 45 minutes, and I wouldn't really get the information I needed from that person to make sure, like, is this a person I want to go down the path with and, explore a little bit more in detail. So I was really bad at that initial screening thing. And I thought to myself, who amongst my universe is really good at that? And I asked that person to be my mentor for that specific thing because he was really good at it. So you could have multiple mentors, and you should have multiple mentors, and don't put too much burden on each one because you could just have them for specific things. So that's number one. So I'm a firm believer, like I think at any given point, I have 2 or 3 people who I ask to be my mentors. And when you ask people, you'll be surprised. Like a lot of people say, hey, you know what, I'm putting a burden on them. And it is a time burden in some senses. But a lot of people really love and enjoy being mentors as well. So I've never ever in my 23 years of professional experience, I've never ever asked someone to be a mentor and that person has said, no, I don't want to be a mentor. So people will say yes, right? Like people will want to be mentors. Maybe I'm just lucky to be in companies where that was the culture, but ask for mentors, like stand on their shoulders, discuss stuff with them, and don't just have one, have multiple people. The other mistake a lot of people sometimes make when they're asking for mentors is they're asking for mentors who are in a similar work environment, a similar team. Like they'll ask for mentors, in their team, which is okay, but also try to expand your universe and ask for people to be your mentors from teams which are not the ones you normally interact with, because they bring such a different perspective, a different way of thinking about it. And every perspective is growth. So you will learn a lot from them as well. So my personal belief is ask for a lot of mentors, you could ask them for specific things. You could have a general mentor that you're going and brainstorming about stuff as well. But don't try to do it alone. Like you learn so much from all these different perspectives, which it would be impossible for you to learn by yourself.
Yeah. And Abbas, like to add to that, I think it's really important to find people outside of your company, outside of your industry, folks who are just honestly, they have nothing to gain from mentoring you, from helping you except for themselves. Right. Like some of my mentors, like folks who are retired folks who used to work in medical device industry, right? Used to be an executive there. Another person who used to, retired professors. Another person who, used to be a therapist in there. That's what a great mentor, right? Like they've dealt with a lot of things, and it's like, hey, I know you from my network. Can you help me with a few things? Such a diverse group of people, and every single person, you get a nugget, just one thing.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just that one thing that is life-changing, right? At the moment in the context, right? So mentors, right? That's the lesson here.
And it's such a superpower you have, Dave, where you ask people to be your mentors, and a lot of people don't use it because they're afraid that people, and maybe they'll say no. Okay, let's move on to the next person who'll say yes, right? But I don't think a lot of people will say no when you ask them to be your mentors, and so you need to get out of your own head, and you need to sort of just go ahead and ask, and you'll be surprised at how much you learn. Yeah,
it's when you ask for help, people are willing to help.
People are willing
I think exactly. You'll be very surprised. Yes, just with all the lessons you've learned, you said 23 years in the industry and, where you are now. If you had to go talk to the 20-year-old Abbas and whisper in his ear and give him advice, what would you tell the 20-year-old self?
Emotional bank. I don't know if you know what I mean when I say emotional bank, but I believe all the people we interact with, we share an emotional bank account. So you and I share an emotional bank account, right? And I need to put deposits into that account before I start taking withdrawals. So as you're thinking about the people in your universe, start building that emotional bank account, start putting deposits in that account, because the first time you interact with someone should not be when you need their help, or should not be when you're in crisis and now there's an escalation and you want to work with them. You should be building relationships. My one advice to my younger self is that everything is about relationships. Everything is about the network, right? You will find the right jobs if you have the right network. You will find the right answers if you have the right relationships. And the way to make those relationships is an easy way to visualize it is through this emotional bank. What are you putting? What are you depositing into that bank? And hopefully, if you have deposited, and sometimes you may have an overdraft and you're withdrawn before you deposited, and sometimes it's okay. But try your best to put money into that, or put whatever effort into that account before you ask to withdraw from it. And the more you do it, the more successful you'll be.
So it sounds like the analogy of like put your own mask on before you put others' mask on. Is that right?
Kind of, right? So, for example, when it's you and I, and I'll just sort of say use that as an example. So you and I have this relationship that we've been sort of sharing for almost 10 years now, since we know each other, Dave, right? And hopefully, every time we talk, you give me some nuggets of information. I give you some nuggets of information. We share fun stuff, and we're building our relationship that way. And now if I need help from you, you're more likely to help me because we have a established relationship versus, you were just David Fung, who's at Salesforce, and I didn't really know you that well. And now I pick up my phone and ask you for help. So when you are working, like as SEs, for example, when you're working on an account, what are the things that you're doing for that customer before you're asking that customer to do something for you? So always think about not just customers, not just friends, not just colleagues, but in every pretty much relationship, what is it that you are doing for someone else? Ask what you can do for your country, not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for the person in your network, not just what that person can do for you, right? So are you putting money into that emotional bank before you're asking for any withdrawal?
Okay. No, I get it. This really sounds like it goes back to like your feeling at the beginning, like around community, the giving back to the community. I'm curious, like I remember like talking to you before. You were very involved in your community, giving back. This mindset. What do you have going on right now from that perspective?
So I'm going to Guatemala end of May. We are going. So
You always had some trip. You always had some trip, Abbas.
So that when I look at when I look at what are some of the things I enjoy doing from a giving back perspective, I work a lot with the Mississauga Food Bank as an example, like especially during COVID, and even now, like just the demands that that have been placed on some of these organizations is incredible. So we do a lot of volunteer work, a lot of sort of fundraising for them. But the other aspect of this I love doing is there are a bunch of organizations which have overseas projects where you go to, like I've been to Morocco, I've been to Nicaragua, I've been to Thailand, and now I'm going to Guatemala, where you go in this really remote, it's not fancy at all. You're literally living in a hut, but you're living like the locals live. The locals, you're eating what they essentially cook, and you're eating that. And then you're building some sort of a community center, or you're building a school, or you're doing something like that. Like in Thailand, for example, they have a problem where, elephants, once they get old, are essentially abandoned because they can't do work anymore. So there's this organization which gets old abandoned elephants together in the middle of the forest, and then they take care of them. So I went there, I lived with them for a week, and every day we would sort of bathe the elephants, and we would feed the elephants, and we just take care of them. So it sort of marries my love for travel with my love for giving back, with my love for, hey, yes, of course, fundraising is important, giving money is important, but sometimes tactically doing something with your hands is important as well. And this sort of helps me do that.
Yeah. And then perhaps after the show, we can provide some of the links to the charities and the nonprofits that you are passionate about, and to use this platform as a way of helping them out further. That sound good?
There's a great organization called Ask Foundation, and they provide hot lunches to the homeless people, the homeless population of Toronto and Hamilton. And they, I kid you not, we'd gone there a couple of months back, and we sort of packed these lunches, and we're like, oh my God, we have like 50 lunches, right? And they said, okay, you may have to go to 3 or 4 different places, because you'll probably need to go to 3-4 places to distribute them. The first spot we went to, 50 lunches, like literally 5 minutes were over. So there's this hidden need, right? Like sometimes you don't even see the need, but there is this hidden need. There is this, So yes, absolutely, I will share some of the links for you. And if the listeners, if you want to get involved in any way, reach out to me as well, or reach out directly to those organizations too.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I like about these organizations too, like it's tangible. Like when I've worked at done stuff at the food bank, it's tangible. The place I'd like to, both volunteer, but also donate to on a regular basis is the furniture bank here in Toronto. My old furniture still functional. Yeah. Another family gets it at a very discounted price, right? Sometimes even given away, right? That's a cause that I'm really passionate about. And a lot of them are folks that are new to Canada who don't have the same resources. And I know my parents probably, they depended on a lot of that stuff when they came to Canada. So there's a connection for me, right? But I'm very much, we talk about outcomes. I am about outcomes. I like to see some tangibility of where my dollar is going, right? Not just this nebulous organization, right? And the food and the furniture, I find tangibility there. Yeah. So we'll share more in the links, in link notes here. I am curious your point of view. What do you think the world will look like in 5 years?
That's such an interesting question, Dave. And it's such an exciting time to be alive as well, because, the rate of change has never been as fast as it has been, like ever. And it's the slowest it's going to be in the future, right? So the pace of change is just going to get faster and faster and faster. I know a lot of chatter around, the AI and what that means from, not just from a technology perspective, but also what it means for us as a society, because a lot of jobs are going to be automated by AI. So how do what happens to the people who are doing those jobs, and what kind of reskilling, retraining is required for them to do other stuff? And what is that other stuff? So to answer your question, I don't even know. I don't even know. And, like normally you would say, I don't know if it's 30, 40, 50 years out. It's strange to say, I don't even know what it's going to be like in the next 5 years, right? Like, will we have cars that are flying? Like, possibly. Will we have AI that's indistinguishable from a human in pretty much every aspect? Possibly. Like, you see some of the Boston robotic robots, and it's incredible how, they do all these crazy gymnastics, which would be impossible for even a human to do sometimes, right? And with ChatGPT and how clever they are at sort of answering questions, unless you knew, you wouldn't be able to recognize that it's not a human you are interacting with anymore. So the world's going to be, I don't know what it's going to be like, but it's going to be really, really different. And companies need to start thinking about it, especially technology companies, around how they're going to deal with that next wave of stuff that's happening, right? So, like technology advances happens in waves, and we are in the AI wave, so to speak. So it'll be really interesting to see how it sort of all pans out. But it's also a little frightening, to be honest with you, Dave, because it's so easy to misuse some of this technology, whether it's for political propaganda, whether it's for, criminal intents. Like their jobs become easier because the tools that they have at their disposal are so much more powerful. So, from a what happens to the law and order situation in the country, what happens to the economy of the country, what happens to the technology that we use. Like, these are really big questions that, we'll need to answer at some point.
It is. What's been on my mind around AI. I don't know where it's going to go, but I know where it could fall down pretty quickly. And, whatever we figure out, there needs to be responsible use of it, baked into it. However it is, it's kind of scary when the Elon Musks of the world and some of those guys are saying, hey, we need to slow down
pause
with this innovation. Like, there's a problem when he's saying you need to slow down.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's just purely because of self-interest from a capitalistic perspective. I think they truly see that the downsides of it, right? Like, the deep fakes, like imagining someone could create a podcast like this in a snap of a finger, having you and I say, atrocious things, right? That used to take a lot of work.
Yeah.
That could be done at a scale that is unbelievable right now.
Yeah.
And so what is the responsible use we need to put around that? Because I almost see this as there's some mutual assured destruction, between different entities. If we don't get this under control, it's not just, what you can use against an enemy can use against you just the same. So that part's the scary part, but it's also, it's exciting at the same time. So I think we're at a huge turning point. Whatever this becomes, is going to be interesting.
And it's just so interesting. And, like for people who've been around for a while, like I don't know if you remember the days where, PCs would not even have a hard disk, right? Like, you'd have floppy drives, and you would have the 5.25 floppy drive with 512 KB of memory. And you're like, oh my God, like that's so much space. I have so much space to do it, right? And it's like, from that, like in the same generation, to come to a point where you have, terabytes of data which are on a pen drive, it's just incredible to see the rate of advance. And exactly to your point, like, we talk about it from a day-to-day and, what people can do, but also think about it in terms of states and countries and how they could use or misuse some of this technology. And you're so right. It's a very scary time, but also as a technologist, it's a very exciting time as well, right? Because you're like, oh my God, this is freaking incredible. And, the next car I have, I like, for example, my younger son, I don't really know if he needs a driver's license anymore, because the cars will drive themselves, right? So even simple things like that, it means a lot of change for a lot of the things we just take for granted today.
Yeah. I think, dare I even make an analogy here? And, I hope I'm proven wrong. I think this AI is as significant as when we discovered how to control the fission of an atom. Like, I think this is as significant as that, because when we, as a society found out how to split an atom, right, the Manhattan Project, that created, oh, wait, hold on a second.
Yeah.
How do we make sure this doesn't proliferate? We don't hurt each other in the process. I think this could be as significant as that. I hope I'm proven wrong. And I hope this, I hope I'm proven wrong about that, but it could easily go that way.
It could.
If we're not responsible.
It could.
Yeah.
And the problem is, though, like, are we even, like, can we make changes at the rate changes are happening in the technology? And I don't really know if we can, right? I don't know if we can make changes to laws quickly enough. I don't know if we can make changes to the way society functions quickly enough to keep in pace with the speed of change in technology. And that'll be critical, because previously, when something changed, you had years to adapt to that change, right? But now it's like months and days. So it'll be really interesting.
Well, it again. I don't know where this is going to go, but quantum computing is the other side of it. If you get that side of it figured out, it's going to solve a lot of problems. But imagine ChatGPT 4 on quantum computing, right? That is more than just an exponential growth, right? Every encryption algorithm out there is useless.
Is useless,
right? And so it's a national security problem as well. So anyways, that's not the point of this podcast, by the way, but we did go, I wanted to go that way. We went there. I asked you, what do you think about the future? So I'm going to give you the second last question. Okay. What question do you have?
As you're doing these podcasts, and I know you've been sort of doing a lot of coaching, Dave, the same question you asked me, like, if there was advice you had to give to your younger self, to the Dave Fung who's 20 years old, are there one or two pieces of advice you would give them?
Yeah. I think the first piece of advice I would give myself, and I probably would ignore him, right? It would be an okay boomer moment. But attitude. So we talked a lot about that, but more so, when I was 20 years old, I think things came too easily to me, and like academically and everything. A lot of things came easily to me. I would see things like you talk about Fourier transforms and all that. I understood that stuff very easily, right? Probably too easily for my own good. And so I got lazy, and I didn't have the right discipline, the right attitude. Things happened, in my life, and, whatever those were. And I learned a big lesson about attitude and discipline. And, it went back to, it's funny, like some of your teachers saw something in you and were warning you. In grade 9, I remember in my yearbook, I had a teacher who wrote, intelligence is important, David, but discipline without intelligence is of no use to you. And I was at the time, I'm like, what the hell is he? What are you talking about? And that lesson came back to me as a 20-something-year-old. And I realized, discipline is important. Doing things not just because you feel like it. There's things you just have to do, right? So that's probably one of the biggest lessons I would advise to folks, right? But the second thing is just don't take the highs too high, don't take the lows too low.
Yeah.
Right. You talk about zooming out. That's when you celebrate, things are going great. Don't think it's going to last forever. Right. Yeah. Be realistic. And then when things suck, it's going to end. Right. And so, everything that's been happening, whether it's good or bad, I'm just kind of like, whatever. It's okay. It doesn't matter, right? Things, nature has a way of reclaiming balance. You know, it might be slower if you try to resist it, but nature's going to get its way. Natural selection will get its way.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's the two pieces of advice I would give to myself, but as well as people out there, is discipline eats motivation for lunch.
Yeah.
And chill out. Don't take the highs too high. Don't take the lows too low. The good times won't last forever. Neither will the bad times.
Yeah.
You know, you got to live somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. That's great advice. It reminds me of a quote from a Disney, like Finding Nemo. So towards the end of the movie, Dory tells Marlin, who's Nemo's dad in the movie, that if you never let anything happen to Nemo, nothing will ever happen to Nemo, right? So take the chance, roll the dice. Like, to your point, don't take the highs. You know, don't worry too much about the highs. Don't worry too much about the lows. Like, follow your heart and discipline. I think that's a really important point you made around discipline as well, because you know, like, even like as we're doing the job, no matter what happens in the morning, show up, right? Like, showing up is so much more important than showing up perfectly. Like, you may not be perfect, but showing up is so important. So just show up and, you know, like, have the discipline to sort of just do what needs to be done. Those are great life lessons.
Excellent life lessons. Well, sounds like one more podcast guest that needs to be on this show, Nemo. So you tell Bill and Serena to take a back seat. Nemo's next. All right. Well, you know, tell the listeners out there. So, what do you got going on? I mean, if they want to reach out to you, how do they reach out to you?
So LinkedIn is the easiest way to reach out to me. I'll put the link, if you don't mind putting the link in the podcast. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty active on on Twitter as well. So if you want to reach out to me on Twitter, you could sort of reach to me over there. But yeah, reach out. You know, if you need to brainstorm anything, if you need to bounce some idea. Like, I love hearing. Every time I speak to someone, I get as much from that conversation, as probably the other person gets from the conversation with me as well, right? And my resolution for this year is start less but finish more. And what I mean by that is, you know, like, a lot of times you're like, oh, what are the 10 things I want to do, and what are the 15 things I have on my plate, and you're always thinking about things to start. It's okay to do lesser things, but finish them, right? So start less, finish more is, I have two resolutions this year. One is start less, finish more. And the second one, which is a continuation of, since a few years, it's called say yes to fun. So as we go through life, many a times, especially as you get older, and I'm getting old, Dave. I may not look like it, but I'm old. But as we get old,
welcome to your 20s. Welcome to your 20s.
But as you get old, you kind of become more practical, right? And like, for example, if my friends say, hey, do you want to go out? I'm like, no, the kids have activities tomorrow morning and we need to wake up at a certain time. So I don't want to make it a late night. And practicality starts sort of, becoming more important. And a few years back, we sort of said, hey, if someone's asking us to do something fun, we'll just say yes. And we'll figure out the practicality of that later on. And it's incredible how much more fun our lives are because of that. And it's not that, the practicality has gone away. Like, we still do whatever we need to do, but we don't worry about it constantly. And we don't let that dictate, how much fun we'll have. So say yes to fun and then start less and finish more.
All right. Well, excellent, Abbas. Lessons to live by all the folks listening to this, and by all the leaders out there. Start less. And was it say yes to fun?
Yeah. Start less, finish more, right? And then say yes to fun. Say yes to fun.
Excellent. Well, Abbas Rangwala, I appreciate your time today, sir.
Awesome, Dave. This was great. Thank you for having me, and thank you everyone for listening.
All right. We're going to sign off for now.